Anyone has complaints,
Spiegel Catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60645.
Yeah,
and Mary Lynn, you're too young to even know what that means. Okay, that was game shows in the 60s and the 70s. You win a gift certificate from Spiegel Catalog.
We have an entire post office building that was dedicated to Spiegel. Yeah. I've taken the architectural tour, damn it.
Now streaming live.
We are now streaming live, folks.
Okay, we're gonna get going because I'm a little busy. All right, what time? Okay, since we're recording and our fearless leader, the president's here, I'm gonna go move forward and I'm gonna call to order the Finance Committee meeting for the Park District of Highland Park for Wednesday, October 6th, 2021 at 4 p.m. I have a statement to read. Pursuant to Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act, the president of the Board of the Park District Commissioners has made a finding that it is not practical or prudent to hold in-person meetings because of COVID-19 public health emergency. Neither the elected officials nor the public will be allowed to attend regular or committee meetings in person, but will participate virtually by the means described below. Roxanne, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein?
Here.
Commissioner Freeman?
Here.
President Ruttenberg?
I'm here.
In the agenda, I don't see what the means are described below, but I assume that means that we're having this by Zoom. Is that correct, Executive Director?
That is correct, and there is a registration link on the actual agenda that is posted on the website, in which people can register. And nobody has registered for this meeting that I'm aware of, correct, Roxanne?
Yeah, there's no attendees.
Okay, so we are live streaming on YouTube, but nobody is registered to attend.
Okay, fine. Additions to the agenda. Executive Director Romes, are there any additions to today's agenda?
There are no additions. I think the only update was that we don't have minutes from last meeting to approve tonight since it was such a recent meeting. So just wanted to confirm that.
Okay, well, it's actually been removed from my agenda, so we appreciate the update in case anybody's keeping score at home that from a previous agenda. Public comments for items on the agenda. Executive Director, is there? Oh, do we already go through this?
Yeah, there's nobody registered, so there's no public comment. Nobody here to comment.
Is there anybody who sent you an email or anything with regards to?
Nope.
Okay, great.
Nothing.
All right, next item on the agenda is the 5-year capital plan final draft, and Director Smith to present.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen real quick. All right, can everyone see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
So I'm gonna, this is just a brief follow-up from our last meeting where we reviewed the 5-year capital plan draft. So we, based on the feedback we received, we made a few changes to the plan. I'm just gonna summarize those and see if there's any questions. I know the committee was sent out the updated plan to review. So first off, here are the 6 tiers that we reviewed at the previous meeting. I'm not gonna go through them all, but if there's any questions about any of them, I'm happy to answer those.
I think we're pretty familiar with this since we've spent a lot of time on it. If you just want to highlight the changes.
Perfect. And here we go.
Oh,
So,
genius.
the first change is there were some adjustments to some of the 2021 projections. That's as projects progress, some of the numbers, we have a better idea of them. Now, once we're done here, this plan is going to come to the full board at the October meeting, and then it'll be approved as part of the budget. I anticipate there could be some more changes in the projections when we bring this to the full board as projects continue to go along and we get better ideas of the actual pricing. And as far as items in the plan for Danny Kniff Park, we did make an adjustment to the line item for the turf fields. We have some of the planning dollars moved to a year earlier to 2023 to start that, looking at feasibility and starting to get that process going a little sooner. We also added a line item for the pickleball courts there. There's feedback we're getting regards to the noise that pickleball makes. And so we are looking into some kind of curtains that you hang on the exterior of the fencing, and that's what that is right there. So we're putting that in 2022. And oh, I apologize, I didn't list the tier. We're listing that as a tier 4. From a large part, we made an adjustment to the bluff restoration line item. We have dollars, we were showing dollars in 21 and in 22 for this. We recently had a Parks and Natural Areas Committee meeting, and staff made a recommendation as to how to move forward with the restoration work there. So we've adjusted those numbers based on that. The total amount didn't change much. It's more about more of the dollars are going to be spent in 2022 rather than this year in 21. For Centennial, we did a slight increase to the budgeted amount for the Zamboni replacement. And for Heller Nature Center, we had budgeted in 2023 a sidewalk replacement, but due to the current condition, we're moving that up a year early to next year. Those were all the changes that were made. And then this is a summary of the plan, similar to what we saw at the previous meeting, but with the updated numbers. So I'm happy to take any questions on this or any questions specific to the plan that you had reviewed.
President Ruttenberg.
No, I'm content with what I'm seeing.
Commissioner Freeman.
No questions from me.
I don't have any questions. I did have some further comments, but I think those are pretty much been addressed. I appreciate the 2 changes with regard to trying to accelerate the review of this and implementation of the sports field master plan. And I forgot what the other one was, but I'm happy about the other one that I can't remember what it is. So
Pickleball.
So what was that? Pickleball. Thank you. So I appreciate both of those changes. What's the next step with this 5-year capital plan?
So we'll be presenting this at the full board meeting in October. And then it will be approved as part of the final budget approval.
The only suggestion I would have is with regard to projects, especially projects that we're intending to fund and complete in 2022, if we somehow message that to the community of what the project. I mean, there's still a lot of misinformation out there with regard, for example, the dog beach at Moraine Park, that it's being left to basically left fallow and it's not going to be improved. So if Liz can work on some type of messaging program with regard to get the information out there, I think that would help eliminate some of the I'm not going to call fake news, but some of the misunderstandings with regard to projects that the Park District is about to undertake.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will send you an article that's going to be going in the Highlander, and I'll send it to the board so you can see it. And it addresses all of our lakefront properties. And then we'll also do some follow-up once we get through the capital plan and do some messaging on that as well. So,
I mean, do we have the ability to access a database of people who have purchased or currently or in the past passes to go to the dog park?
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah.
Can we target them and just to let them know that the Moraine Beach Dog Park will be renovated next year?
Certainly can. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have. Anybody else have anything else?
Oh,
Okay. Wow.
Thank you very much.
Wow, that was great. Okay, next item on the agenda is market update, refunding opportunity, new money analysis, and a 10-year funding model. Director Peters and Bob Lewis. Oh, we have Bob Lewis here today.
We do. And Bob, are you able to share your screen?
Yes, I can.
All of this is in the house, so it's great. So Bob Lewis from PMA, we're honored to have you, and we're excited to hear your presentation. So the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you. So on this side, are you seeing?
Yeah, I think we're seeing your sort of cheat sheet, if you will. We're not seeing the presentation. We're seeing, yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why when I go to full screen, it flips over to the other monitor, but So I'll be looking off to the right. So I apologize. I'm not looking at you guys straight on. In this presentation, just want to recap where we're at with the market. This is the municipal bond index from the beginning of 2020, which, just as a reminder, we hit an all-time low in this index of August of 2020, have come up and a bit since then, and recently have experienced an increase in interest rate with some of the concerns around inflation. This recent spike occurred after the last Fed meeting. I don't have the last 2 or 3 days on here since I emailed this over to the administration, and things have sort of flattened out or stabilized, so at least the last few days at these new regional equilibrium points. But the takeaway here is, although rates have started to creep upward here, from a historical perspective, we're still at very attractive levels. The next slide here, is just a summary of the types of outstanding debt obligations that you have utilized. You have debt certificates, which you pay back from your operating funds. Examples of those are the 2012 and 2013 debt certificates, which we're going to talk about again here in a moment about the refinancing opportunity. Some restrictions on debt certificates is they can go out no more than 20 years, but there is no petition period or hearing that's required to issue them. They do sell at a bit higher interest rate than a general obligation bond, maybe 0.05 to 0.1%, probably closer to the 0.05 for a AAA rated credit as yourself, and at these compressed rate levels. So I wouldn't expect it to be that much of a penalty. In the past, the district has preferred to go ahead and use these for the type of borrowings that you pay back from your operating funds. And then you have bonds, which are particularly paid back from a separate property tax levy. You have general obligation referendum park bonds. You have none of those outstanding. And then you have non-referendum park bonds, which consist of your 17 and 2020 bonds. In order to sell those, you do have to conduct a hearing, just similar to your budget hearing. And they're also payable from within the debt service extension base, which is part of the tax cap law, which limits your ability to do non-referendum park bonds. This current plan of finance that we're talking about doing this year would be consisting entirely of debt certificates. So speaking of the debt certificates, the 2012 and 2013 debt certificates were issued for capital projects and also to realize debt service savings on some prior debt certificates that finance capital projects. The original amounts of those financings were $6.7 and $8.7 million respectively. The interest rates on those are actually relatively attractive. You look at them from a historical perspective, but they are above today's market. The 2012 certificates have a rate of 3% on the remaining maturity. So this isn't what you've paid before. This is what remains, and 2 3/4% on the 13 certificates. Of those remaining of the certificates, what remains that is callable is $5,465,000, and that's principal that's due after December 15th of 2021. So those are payments due in 2022 and after. And those can be refinanced on that call date or any time 90 days before that call date. So we're in that window right now. We estimate the savings from refinancing these obligations, or essentially the present value of the call option, to be about $250,000. And what's nice about these being callable at the same time you're contemplating a new money financing is we can change the payment stream a bit to accommodate the new money financing to maintain budget certainty, which you're going to see here on the next slide. So on this slide, you'll see in the far left column what is remaining of the 12 and 13 debt certificates. You're right around $1,550,000 per year for the next 3 years, and then the payment would decline. So with this proposed new financing, it would generate $17 million for projects in total, and it would refund the outstanding principal for total net proceeds of just under $22.5 million. Now the payback over that 20 years is $27 million, and that's a pretty good ratio of what you're receiving to what you're paying back, which is indicative of how low rates are. You know, the estimated rate on this financing is about a 1.91%. And now, as a credit, so to speak, against the payment that the operating funds would have to pay is this Park Avenue contribution, which Director Peters has estimated would be calculated at $118,750 per year. That would go towards the payment of this debt service, which you'll see then after you net that off, that contribution, you're left with a payment of $1,555,000 for the next 9 years, which is what you're currently paying. So it's not increasing the burden of what on the operating funds from what they've already been paying. Now you notice what's scheduled here is a drop off in 2031.
Wait, Bob, I'm going to interrupt you. I want to have this really clear to everybody. And I'm sorry, I brought this up and maybe it didn't get conveyed. The Park Avenue contribution is not guaranteed. The Park Avenue contribution, for our thinking, we might as well ignore it because we're obligated for the full $22 million. We're internally allocating debt service payments toward that, but it is Park District funds that's being used. And I've objected to our characterizing it in this manner. I just want everybody to know.
I think actually, and I understand what you're saying, but I think what the point that we're trying to make is that the risk to the district is that $118,000 on an annual basis. That we are in order to the goal is to keep our payments flat, consistent with what we're doing in fiscal year 2022, or 2023. However, under the existing debt certificates, however, we're assuming some risk because you're correct. It's not a sure thing. It's not a layup that we're going to be getting the $118,750 from the park. We're going to be generating that from Park Avenue.
No, Cal, I totally appreciate that, but I just want, I don't want anybody to go on the misconception that there is $118,000 that's coming from some third source. It's Park District obligation to pay that money. You said it's a risk. I agree with that. But again, we keep characterizing it as funds coming from, as if these were revenue bonds directly allocated towards Park Avenue, and that was the only source of payment.
I got it. Okay. Well, I think we're saying the same thing different ways.
We are.
Okay. Jen, since we stopped, I'll open the floor. Do you have any questions or comments? Or are you taking an order from the Spiegel catalog? Okay, she's taking an order right now. We'll come back to Jen.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, I was on mute on my Spiegel catalog thing. I said
I'm sorry,
no
I thought you were
questions
taking an
for
order.
me.
Someone's ordering some shower shoes or something like that.
Yeah, no, we're good. This is clear to me. Thank you.
Okay. So what's set up in the structure is similar like you had before. Your debt certificates in the aggregate were set up to have a payment decline, which affords the opportunity, if necessary, to borrow for capital funds again while maintaining the same net payment. So when you get to 2030, 31 in that range, if there's a need to finance again and you went out for another 20 years, the delta between the payment in 2030 and 2031 is $590,000. So if you did $590,000 over another 20 years at an average rate of 2.5%, again, who knows what interest rates will be then, but that financing would generate $9.1 million. So just giving you a characterization of the financial flexibility that you have built within the structure. Of course, if there is no need at that time to finance, the overall payment, the burden on the operating funds would drop, which then frees up dollars for other purposes. In addition,
Bob, let me stop you right there. Did you also run the analysis, assuming that happens, and in 2030, 2031, if the board decides to reissue the general obligation, the debt certificates, when would be the next time that be a tranche of money would be available? Is it another 10 years or?
It's essentially, it's assuming that the payment would be $590 in year 1 and be $590 in year 20. So then when you get to 2041, in that year, it would drop $970,000 $5,000, which then you could re-amortize that over 20 years and net out another, that would be a larger amount. That might be, 13, $14 million.
So basically what I'm hearing is that future boards in 2030, 2031 will have potentially another 9.1 million available to them. And then when future boards after that, when my kids are on the park board, then they'll have money for, maybe my grandkids, I don't know, but we'll have money, another maybe 14, $15 million available in 2040.
Yep.
Okay. Got it.
Well, but I have to follow up with my question on the same basis, Cal. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is what happens if we don't have the $118,000 every year from Park Avenue? How does that affect the refinancing as you just described to Cal?
Well, let's say you never get this, then your average, you're paying this amount. The delta is still the same in this year. So let's say you never get the 118,750. Now the park district's paying this amount and it's had to absorb the additional $118,000 every year within its operating budget. When you get to this year, the delta is still $590,000. So you still would be able to net 9.1 million.
So Barney, just to follow basically, I think where you're heading with this discussion is, or these questions, and correct me if I'm wrong, is basically a policy decision that the park board will have to consider and make, is whether they're willing to undertake the possible subsidy of Park Avenue if at a tune of $118,750 per year if we don't have a revenue stream coming from Park Avenue.
And the total effect on what that would do in the refinancing, which I don't quite follow that answer that was given, that we could still generate the same amount of money 10 years out if we're short 118,000 from a third party.
Well,
Do
because
we have to pay the payment?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do.
yeah, because
Right, so essentially, worst case scenario, if Park Avenue does not generate $118,000 a year, that means we transfer right now from our operations to capital $2 million. We would probably transfer $118,000 less into the capital for the next 10 years, which wouldn't have a huge impact, as you'll see on the next page, on our capital plan, but it would have an impact.
So my suggestion is when this comes back to the park board for discussion, that the discussion is framed based on from that lens, from looking through those lenses, what potentially the failure to have that revenue stream coming from Park Avenue, how would that impact from an annual based on an annual under a 5-year capital plan, and also the ability to refinance these debt certificates.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say that 5 times fast.
It is not death certificate. It is death certificate.
You know, I just did a handle a probate matter today, and I had death certificates on my mind. Okay, so
And
Yeah.
that's precisely the approach I'd like to see, and that's what I was digging around. And we need another
Yeah.
piece of the chart that says if we don't get the Park Avenue contribution, what the effect would be.
and
Yeah.
if Barney, if you want to have that discussion after Bob's done with his presentation, we can actually have that discussion at the finance committee, or we can wait and have that discussion with the entire board. So it's, you're the president. You set the agenda. It's your call.
No, I'm not quarreling with the presentation. I'm just saying, let's have that data to the board without going through my having asked these questions, which some people might take as offensive. I want there to be refunding new money debt service, less Park Avenue, then net payments, assume no Park Avenue, and what the effect would be on the stuff in blue, which says where we can refinance and get more money.
Yeah. So if I can address that, there would be no impact in the stuff in blue, because the impact is you now annually, instead of having $118,000 that flows towards the bottom line to use for other purposes, that 118 has to be used to pay the debt service. So the impact is going to be on what's available for pay-as-you-go capital or other expenditures. This right here, the 590, you take a $590,000 payment, that keeps the change from one year to the next the same. So it's 590 here when you subtract these two numbers, and it's 590 when you subtract these two numbers.
So I'm sure we're going to see in the next slide that it won't impact the ability to refinance and receive proceeds from a debt certificate, but it may impact our ability to fund the 5-year capital plan.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
and I'm gonna, before I segue and turn it over to Director Peters here, the one other note that's unrelated to this plan of finance is more of an FYI. You do have the general obligation bonds, which are payable from the debt service extension base. As part of the way that those were done, there was a slot created that would allow you to do another 5 to 6 million in 2024, another 6 million if necessary in 28. And then from there, it's sort of ballparking based off interest rates and EAV assumptions, but another 5 million or so every 3 to 4 years thereafter.
So can I characterize
Yeah,
this
sure.
in like, let's talk about, okay, so Barney's concerned about the 118. If we just took this middle column here, the Les Avenue, Park Avenue contribution, like take that out. That's what we're looking at realistically, pretending that doesn't even happen. That can change our capital plan funding. However, we also are not hamstringing ourselves for the future because there's still money to borrow if needed, unforeseen things, etc. We're basically trying to put ourselves in the same payment place if possible now, do all the things that we'd like to do with our capital plan. And if unforeseen things happen, there is still more money to borrow along the way in future years.
That is the correct characterization.
Mhm.
And,
Okay.
Thank you.
and then this would be done without increasing the portion. Obviously, it would not increase the debt service portion of our budget, which then translates into the tax levy. We would not have to increase our tax levy just for the purposes of meeting our financial obligations with regard to this debt service. That we could do it for other reasons, but this is not you don't foresee a situation where by following this finance plan that it would create a situation where we would then be compelled to increase our tax levy just to meet our obligations here.
Not to the extent unless the 120 doesn't materialize, and then okay, so now you got to pay 1,675,000, and then where what is being crowded out from the 120? Is that just crowding out other expenditures, or I wouldn't anticipate that it would cause a tax increase because your tax increase is already limited by PTEL. So it's not like you can go do 120 more. So it really is more of what are you going to reprioritize if that contribution doesn't come to fruition.
Okay. All right, let's stop right there. President Ruttenberg,
I
you're
have to,
thinking?
yes, I think you confused me when you refer to a 120.
Well, I'm sorry, I rounded
118.
118,750.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And
All right,
anything
no,
else, Brian?
I just want to make sure. No, I understand. My whole, this is totally consistent, and the answers have been exactly what I was hoping would be. That forget about Park Avenue contribution of $120,000. Pretend it doesn't exist. We're still good to raise the money and have the funding we need, and whatever we get from revenue at Park Avenue is, going towards our general capital, our general budget.
Okay.
But we're fine with the money, and we can raise enough money to do most of the capital projects.
Commissioner Freeman, anything?
No more from me. Thank you.
Okay, I got nothing. Okay, Bob, next slide.
Yes, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Dr. Peters.
Yes, thank you. Okay. And so here.
Wait, before you go, Mary Lynn, Bob, did we forget to ask any questions that we should have asked, or did we hit them all?
No, I guess the only thing we didn't discuss was a timeline, but we were coming back to that when Director Peters finishes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Can everyone see this yellow slide, the direct 10-year funding model?
Yes.
Yeah, do you
Yes.
want to put it back in presentation mode so it's larger?
Yeah.
It's a little small.
Sure.
Also, at the end of every meeting, I'm going to ask people if there are any questions I should have asked but didn't. I love that.
You like that, Jen?
Okay. That's good.
That's an attorney trick.
Yeah.
All right.
It is, but I don't always wear that hat. So kudos to you, sir.
Oh, right now you're taking orders from Spiegel, the way Cal said. We understand.
Okay. All right. So on your screen, we have our draft 10-year funding model. And so this really pulls together what Director Smith has presented at the last Finance Committee meeting, as well as his presentation earlier this evening, as well as what Mr. Lewis just presented to us too. So in this 10-year funding model, we are looking at just tiers 1 through 5, so not tier 6. So we're just looking at maintaining and improving capital items at the Park District, including Westridge and Park Avenue. And so if you recall, we start with our ending audited capital fund balance, which is about $11.4 million at December 31st, 2020. Then we have coming into our revenue in 2021, the $17 million in bonds that Bob just explained to us. Coming in also to the capital fund would be from the recreation fund. We originally budgeted 1.5 million. So we are having a pretty decent year, and we felt we could transfer 2 million at the end of the year. And that's why this is highlighted in red. I also want to point out to you, so the discussion about not collecting the $118,000 from Park Avenue, that's where it would fall out of this. We wouldn't transfer the whole 2 million if we felt we couldn't. You would short the 2 million by that $120,000. So your transfer would be more like a $1.8 million. We are also proposing transferring $1 million from the general fund this year. That was not budgeted. We have not transferred money from the general fund in over a decade, and money has been accumulating in that fund. And so we feel it is prudent to transfer $1 million to the capital fund at the end of this year. And we're also anticipating $500,000 of capital projects that qualify as special recreation. And so we would refund the capital fund, or I'm sorry, transfer over from the special recreation fund the $500,000 for those projects. And presently, based on the slide that Director Smith just showed us, we are projecting total capital projects of 4.2 million in 2021, which brings us to a capital fund balance of $27.6 million. And so then we take this and we roll it forward for the next 10 years. You can see we show $2 million in the recreation fund every year being transferred. Again, if we are nervous that Park Avenue is going to contribute zero, this number then may have to come down to roughly $1.8 million. We are also proposing next year to transfer another 1.5 million from the general fund, and then that will be the last time we would anticipate doing that, probably over the next 10 years. Again, we haven't done it for the past decade. So, every once in a while, as that fund balance builds up, we transfer over. Again, $500,000 from the special recreation fund. We pretty much anticipate that amount every year, except for the year 2026, which is the last year in the 5-year capital plan that Director Smith showed us. And, that's just the way it is right now. Of course, as we get closer to each year, we are more specific on what projects we want to do, how much they're going to cost. And so this may, go up to that $500,000 that we're used to transferring. But at this very moment, we do not have tier 1 through 5 projects that would equal more than this 463. And then we pull the capital project number that was in that 5-year capital plan that Director Smith just showed and drop that in. And we continue just rolling this forward year after year. As Bob Lewis just showed us, in 2024, we would have available to us a bond issuance of somewhere between $5 and $6 million. So we drop that in at $5.5 million. Roll that forward, keep doing that. The other thing I wanted to point out in 2026, besides the special recreation number, also the capital projects number is a little bit lower. Again, when we're looking that far out, it is hard to exactly pinpoint what projects will do and their exact cost. So, this number may very well increase. What we do then after the 5-year plan numbers is we just start using what we think things will be. So again, the $2 million for the recreation fund, we show each and every year. Again, a zero payment from Park Avenue would pull this down to about 1.8 million. Special rec shows the 500 every year. And then for capital projects, we throw in $4 million every year. The other thing, as Bob Lewis just showed us too, also in 2028, would be allowed to have another bond issue of roughly $6 million. So the good news at the end of the day, when we look at this at 2030, that would be 10 years out, we would have a positive fund balance of roughly $3.3 million in the capital fund. And, off the top of our head, if, things don't come through with Park Avenue, so that would be about $1.8 million off this number that we would maybe not be able to transfer here from operations via the recreation fund. We would still be at a positive fund balance at the end of 10 years. So that is important to note. The other thing that's important to note, 2031, which is not shown on here because we're only showing 10 years, but in the 11th year, Bob Lewis also showed us that we would be eligible to issue another $9 million of debt in that year. So as it stands right now, our draft 10-year funding model, funding just tiers 1 through 5, looks very doable. So does anyone have any questions on this before we go to our next funding model?
Before I turn it over to my fellow commissioners, I just have 2 questions. With regard to the bond issue in 2024 and 2028, how would that impact the annual debt obligations or debt payments?
So again, it's always done to keep things the same. The bonds are, those come through taxes, so they're different than a debt certificate. So this keeps your property tax bill, so to speak, considering if your EAV were to be flat.
Yeah,
Okay.
so those have to fit within your debt service extension base. So the
Yeah.
assumption we made is that's increasing annually by the CPI.
So basically, whatever the line item on the tax bill for the bond, for those bonds, those obligations, that will remain flat.
Well, it wouldn't remain flat. It would increase by CPI is what
Oh,
the
by
assumption
CPI.
is.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. And then the assumption here is on the 10-year is that we would spend an annually $4 million on capital projects.
Right, starting in 2027.
Yeah.
The other numbers are based on the actual data in Director Smith's report.
And our policy with regard to fund balance, what is our policy with regard to the capital fund? Remind me again.
We do not have one. We only have for operations and special recreation.
So do you think it's wise that we have a policy for the capital fund?
I'm not familiar. I mean, I'm not aware of any park districts I work with that have a fund balance policy for the capital fund. I may correct myself there. I know Park Ridge Park District has something. They may have like a capital policy, but not necessarily a fund balance. That it's something you could go out and look at, Mary Lynn. But they have some sort of policy that cites the capital fund, but I don't think it's a fund balance policy per se for the capital fund.
Well, I'd like to explore that, and we can have a conversation at a future finance committee meeting of whether we should have either whatever you want to call it, a minimum fund balance or a certain amount of reserve in the capital in the capital plan in the capital budget. So let's again, we don't have to talk about it today, but maybe sometime in the future, that's something when we have a light agenda that we can talk about whether we think that's wise. Maybe and take a look and see if other districts are doing it. Do a more actually a wider survey. Okay.
Will do.
Commissioner Freeman, anything?
Just one quick thing. I mean, if we can call debt a few months early, can we add 2031 to this slide for the optics of just showing what the balance can look like if we have another ability to borrow money at that point? I know we don't typically do it 10 years out, but to Cal's point, the ending balance looks one way if you don't have an ability to borrow again coming the following year. I don't know, is that strange or?
I mean, I guess it would just become a draft 11-year funding model. If
I don't know. Well, I guess we're just keeping in mind that the circumstances change dramatically, 1 year later. So it's just, I don't know.
But I think
And-
Jen's point, Jen, I think your point's a good one, and especially in the presentation, you said, for example, that, and in 2031, it's not shown here, but. So I think we keep it as a 10-year funding model and just add, add something so it's, you show that maybe in 2031, certain things could happen. I think that would be.
Some of it's a little selfish, but like to Barney's point, I'm pretty excited about what we can do. The Park District is in a good financial position, really. And it's, there were things that were done during a pandemic that got us to this point, right? And some decisions that were made on programming that we're having a good success with. So I don't want I wouldn't want anyone to pull this slide and be concerned. I think I'm just really excited that we can borrow this money, tackle what we want to in this 5-year capital plan. And it's huge. It's a huge thing to do. And then really be still in good borrowing position, good financial standing. Like it just is really exciting to me. So I want to make sure we convey that in the presentation. That's all.
And that at the same time, keeping our payments flat. I would suggest calling it a draft 10-year +1 funding model.
Plus Q4. Plus Q4.
Considered a 10-year funding model, but it's a +1.
And I think part of it is we're calling those other bonds early, right? So we're canceling debt in advance. So we're looking into the whole 10-year picture at the beginning of 2022, in my opinion. But again, I'm just a lawyer. I'm not a finance expert.
No problem. We can do that.
Okay. Barney, do you have anything?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with Jen on showing that 2030, 31, and however you call it. I don't think anyone cares. The other thing, two things. First of all, if we don't have a sure path to get the 120 from Park Avenue, we very might not spend the $2 million that's expected to spend for Park Avenue. And I'm anticipating that we will, but this is, we have to stay with this consistent approach that there's $2 million for Park Avenue. It will generate $1,120,000 a year. But again, if we don't have that for whatever reasons, we don't get permits, we don't do whatever it is, we're not spending $2 million at Park Avenue.
Well, I think that's a policy discussion that the board will have to have, because we kind of beat this around, but it's like,
I understand.
It's a risk. And I think that discussion needs to be framed, and I'm sure that our president, when he presents when the agenda is put together, our president will frame the item on the agenda. We can have that robust discussion.
It will be carefully framed, but I'm only suggesting that we might not spend the $2 million because there are so many steps that have to plunk in before that.
Absolutely. For me though, Barney, it's not about that 118, whatever. It's the other things that might happen, but I'm willing to proceed like it's going to happen.
Oh, I am too.
At this point.
I am too. I'm understanding the numbers and where we're going. The other thing is on Cal's point about a capital reserve. If we have an emergency repair of $1 million because something happens, just out of curiosity, what account do you take that from? If it's a capital thing that falls down, and is that from a reserve, or is that just from, we got to fix it and we've got the money in our bank account? I'm just curious at how you characterize it.
It would come out of the capital fund. Anything over $10,000 is a capital item.
Yeah. So what I think is important to remember is that everything in this plan is just a plan. So at any point we can adjust. This is tiers 1 through 5, which is tiers 1 through 3 of critical repair and replacement, and tiers 4 and 5, which is improving. So we would adjust. We would say, well, we're not doing this project now because we got to do this project, which is what we do on an annual basis anyway.
Right.
We know the most important things are maintaining what we currently have, and sometimes we want to improve things, but we can't always do it either because the funding isn't available at the right time, or other priorities come up. So this is 1 through 5, and it gives us a lot of flexibility to say, as I think you've all noted, over the next 10 years, we can do everything that we're planning to do to keep things in good condition, maintained well, and also improve our park district and the facilities and services that we provide the community.
So Barney, in a short answer, we would rob Peter to pay Paul. And listen, for example, like a couple years ago when we had that issue with Sleepy Hollow with the bridge, and all of a sudden we had to put a new bridge there, and we had to find the money to do that. You know, we figured that out.
Right, I understand.
Okay, that's a good point, though. It's a good question.
Onward.
Okay, anything else on this, on the 10-year +1, potentially +1 funding model?
I think we've covered, I don't think there are any further questions I would encourage you to ask.
Okay.
I love it.
Look at you.
All right.
Preemptive strike.
And I wasn't even asked that question, by the way. Okay, anything else with this agenda item?
Well, yes, we're not done just yet.
We're not done.
Okay, so now we have a draft of our 5-year funding model. The difference between this green one versus the yellow slide is this includes tiers 1 through 6. Okay, the last slide was 1 through 5. Well, this is 1 through 6. So it's maintaining and improving like the last slide. But tier 6, remember, is unfunded. So when we look at the slide, it's everything is the same fund balance, same $17 million of debt, the same $2 million transfer, the $1 million transfer, the $500,000 transfer. And in 2021, we don't have tier 6. There were no tier 6 projects. So even that number is the same. And the ending fund balance for 2021 is the same. However, as we move forward in this plan, we can see that the capital projects amounts are significantly greater because this includes those tier 6 unfunded projects that Director Smith has shown us previously in the 5-year capital plan model. And so those are all larger. And then as well, previously on the last slide, we saw that the special recreation fund was not at $500,000 every year. It is now. When we have tier 6 projects, we have also additional special recreation projects too. And so what that does to us, if we chose to fund all tier 1 through 6 projects versus the 1 through 5 projects on the last slide, we can see that come 2024, so just 3 years out, we would be in the red. And come 2025, we would be in a really bad place. I mean, basically, we wouldn't have the money to fund. So it is important to note the difference. You know, again, the last slide, we can completely fund our tiers 1 through 5 are maintaining and improving projects. But then when we add these tier 6 projects, you know, we definitely do not have enough money in the capital fund to fund them. And so we just wanted to show the difference.
Questions, comments, President Ruttenberg? You're muted, Barney. Are you still thinking?
No, I was trying to unmute, but I couldn't find I have no questions.
Jen?
No, I was just so excited on the last slide, and now got some wind out of the sails here. But I'm confident we will figure out how to raise the money to fill the gap.
And my suggestion would be that when this is presented to the board, I assume it will be presented to the board, that you also have a slide right after this reminding, what, examples of the tier 6 projects.
Oh yeah, good point.
So we know that's what's not funded. Again, you live and breathe this every day. I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, so it's hard for me sometimes to remember.
Well, Cal, you've raised a good point. Are
What's
there?
wrong?
No, seriously. Are there tier 6 projects that if you had your druthers, from our staff, would rise to be more than a tier 6, and that really should be the ones of focus to try and fund in this 5-year period?
So it right now, as it stands in preparation of the 2022 budget, everything in tier 6 is a project, or everything in tier 6 is a project that staff has not prioritized in a tier 5 based on either staff's opinion or what's in green print, which is our formal master plan, or has been discussed in some way, recommended to the board for approval. So things will change, we anticipate, from year to year. And a lot of these projects as we have done consistently since we developed the master plan about 5 years ago, is that we identify projects, even if they are unfunded, because we know that we do apply for grants. We know that we do have a Parks Foundation whose purpose is to raise funds through donations. And if we don't have these projects identified, then there isn't a means to get those grants or get those fundraising dollars. So that's a long answer, Barney, sorry, but the short answer is at this time, there's nothing, but that will probably change as we go from year to year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, any other questions on the slide?
Next slide, please.
Okay, and then Bob, if it's okay with you, I will just show your timeline or our timeline.
Yeah, that's
Wanna
fine.
walk us
So
through?
So what's a quick question before, what's the term on these debt certificates that we're going to be issuing?
it'd be 20 years.
20 years? And what do we normally issue? Is it 20 years?
I think in the past it was 15.
Okay. And do you see any issues with, I know the reason why we're doing 20 versus 15, but does that create any negative impact to the district? Obviously, it's another additional 5 years. I get that point, but is there anything else that you can identify that would provide additional risk or issues for the district by extending those certificates another 5-year term?
No, I mean, 20 years is fairly standard. And the impact to the district's debt component of its rating would be negligible because it from the standpoint, yeah, it's a 20-year financing, but it's still front loaded. You have a lot of principal that's paid off in the first 10 years. So
it's normal and customary in the world of Park District finance to issue 20-year debt certificates.
yeah. And when it comes to the bonds, alternate bonds, geo bonds, sometimes those will even go out 25 years. So
Okay.
yeah, there's nothing out of the norm doing this.
So we're following the norms of the Park District financing by doing this.
Yes.
We're not going out of the box on this.
No.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody? Okay, good, Bob.
Yeah, and when I said 15 years, I know that was the one of the debt certificates I worked on that was for capital projects was 15 years. The one that we refinanced back in 12 or 13, I can't remember which one was the new money, which one was the refunding. That one may have refinanced debt certificates that were done 20 years originally.
Yeah, that was the Elliott Miller.
Becker. Yeah.
Elliott Becker. That was his. Yes. Okay.
Right.
All right. Any questions, Barney, Jen? All right, let's
I'm
go to the
good.
timeline.
Yep, good.
Okay.
So the timeline here is assuming that the board decides to proceed, we would obtain a credit rating around October 18th, which would just be reconfirmation of the AAA Moody's rating. We would receive that rating on October 22nd. You would have for your consideration at the October 25th meeting a parameters ordinance to approve the issuance of the 17 million plus the refinancing of the outstanding debt certificates. It is sold as one single series, just with two purposes. So it's not like we have to sell one refunding, one new money. It's sold as one series of debt certificates. And we contemplate taking bids as soon as October 22nd, or excuse me, 27th, and closing on December 1st, which is when you would receive your proceeds, and then the old bonds would be called on December 15th. Or excuse me, the old debt certificates would be called on December 15th.
I know I shouldn't ask the question, but I'm going to do it anyway. What's the administrative fees for proceeding in this manner? Fees. What's it going to cost us to do this?
Yeah, so I estimate the cost of issuance will be, I don't think we've gathered all those yet, but it should be less than 1%. I can get the specific costs once they've been gathered and send them to Mary Lynn. And then our plan is to sell these competitively. So the winning underwriter would be awarded the sale based on who's got the lowest true interest costs, and the true interest cost is a composite of the interest rate and the fee that they take as underwriter.
That's my next question. Okay. All right. So I know there's a cost of doing business, but I just want to make sure that the cost that we're paying is normal and customary.
Yes, it is normal and customary. And one of the things that we've had in mind this whole time is to try to coordinate this new money and the refunding. So it'd be one sale instead of two separate sales done at different times to economize on the cost of issuance as much as possible.
Okay. President Ruttenberg, anything?
Let's keep going.
Okay. Jen?
Nope.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so that is going to conclude this presentation. Bob, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
You're welcome. And
Thanks,
if
Bob.
yep. And if there's anything that you need as a follow-up, just let me know.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Yep.
We
All right,
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
So before we conclude this this agenda item, I don't know if we have to. If you don't have to discuss it tonight, but if I think it's going to be very important how we message this to the community. As our earlier discussion before we went on air about potential bond issues from our sister governments, and it's got to be careful that we message this to reflect that the true impact to the individual taxpayers of the community, and how this would mesh with their existing debt obligations and debt payments. So I think that all has to be packaged in a way that's easy for the community to understand. And when we obviously this is a lot of money that we're asking, we're gonna borrow, and I think it's important for the information to get out there that how this borrowing is going to impact John Q. Public. So I'd like to hear sometime in the future before the 18th or one of those dates in October, how this is going to be messaged.
Okay, so the press release in essence.
Excuse me?
So you're looking for something like a press release?
Well, I mean, what's your plan? How are you going to message this out to the community?
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll obviously be messaged in our budget presentation, but as far as to the community, is there direction from the?
I'm just asking the question. I'm not opining on what I'm suggesting. This is not my area of expertise. I'm just a small town country lawyer. So I don't know how to do these things. So the question I have is, do we message this? Is it important to message? I mean, I'd like to have some feedback from staff on. Oh, Jen, your hands up.
I think it's important. I mean, I do think it's difficult to dig in and find information if you're looking for it, but this is really, I think we have a very positive road ahead of us. And I would like to message that to the community. It answers a lot of questions that we've gotten over the pandemic about things that have been on hold. And a lot of that had to do with not being able to spend money on some things or having the people to do it because of COVID. So I do think there should be some way to message this. It's positive, in my opinion.
I think
especially
you're right.
in the light of all the referendums coming down the pike potentially, it's a lot to say we can do these things
without raising taxes.
Or seeking referendum financing.
Right. Now, somebody might say, well, if you didn't do this, would my taxes go down?
Nope.
And, well, excuse me.
Well, I mean, but don't we?
I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying there will be somebody who says, instead of doing all this work and making things pretty, why don't you lower my taxes $100 a year?
Well, we have a list of things, though, that clearly are prioritized as need doing. And the complaints are largely around those that we do get, right? And so it takes some planning. That's why it's not done immediately. But the planning is all in place and it's going to be put into motion. You're going to see really great things and get the value for your money that you expect. And, I don't know that I would even entertain that other question because this isn't all extra stuff. This isn't, we want to stay on par and we want to be spectacular and all the things that we are and we can be.
And I hear you, Barney, and I think that that's legitimate discussion, saying if you don't do this, this would help offset any potential increase in my tax liability as a result of potential referendums from the school districts. But that being said, what I've heard is that if we also message it that it's not going, if we don't do this, our debt obligations are the same because we're still writing the same amount of money because we're refinancing existing debt. So if we somehow be able to message that one way or the other, these are going to be our obligations, and and we spin it to the fact that we're getting more bang for the buck for the same dollar that we're spending, I think that's maybe way to, again, that's for our PR people to be able to come back to us and tell us what they suggest is the best way to get this out to the community, if any, or we don't do it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's exciting. I'm excited about it, but again, I want to be smart about it. So, we'll listen to the experts and then make our determination.
But let me add in my 3.5 cents.
Okay.
I don't want us to be accused of sneaking in additional debt and not telling the public about it. We have to maintain and preserve and improve our facilities consistent with the expectations of the public that have, resulted in the award-winning Superior Park District with the wow factor for our facilities and operations. I mean, that's the message. It's a good message that facilities are old. They have to be maintained. The community has come to appreciate and rely upon our facilities, and this is consistent with what we've been doing, what we need to do. But I don't think we should. I'm saying I don't think we should not tell people. I think after we approve it, assuming we do at the board meeting and say go ahead and do it, then I think we have a very good, strong, solid message that we get out.
Yeah, I think this is great feedback, and I think we will put together our messaging plan in the next week or so here, and we'll share it with the board so we can be prepared when we come to the board meeting with how we will message this going forward.
Great. Is there anything else with regard to the agenda item, market update, refunding opportunity, new money analysis, and 10-year funding model? Anything else? I just want to point out that Bob and Mary Lynn, the presentations were outstanding. It's a very complicated subject, and you made it easy so even I could understand it. So I really appreciate it, and thank you. And it's always a pleasure to see Bob, so I appreciate him coming to the meeting today.
Well, thank you.
Thank
See you guys
you.
later.
Yes,
Okay,
thanks,
thanks.
Bob.
All right. Next item on the agenda is other business. Director Peters to present.
Okay, so the next thing we have, the next time we meet as a finance committee will be on October 21st. That is a Thursday at 4 p.m. And right now our primary subject will be the tax levy.
Great. Not great, but understood. Understood.
All right.
I noticed anything else, Director Peters?
No, I just want to make sure. Usually it seems like someone can't make it and we need an alternate date. Does that look good for everybody?
I'm sorry, what was the date?
Works for me.
Yeah, I was getting my calendar out. What was the date?
It's October 21st at 4 p.m.
Oh yeah, I got that down. Yeah.
Excellent.
So we will not be going into closed session. Is there anything else, any additions? I'll give that any additions to the agenda. Anybody want to talk about anything else while we're all here? Hearing nothing, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Freeman, seconded by our illustrious president. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and the meeting's adjourned at 5:02 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank